Welcome to the Unstoppable Product Pioneer Podcast, the podcast for business and product leaders ready to turn vision into execution and misalignment into momentum. I'm Tamar Stoltz, and I'm on a mission to help you create clarity, streamline execution, and drive meaningful results. In each episode, I sit down with industry experts who share their insights, lessons, and wins, giving you the tools and strategies you need to turn alignment into your superpower. It's time to own your expertise, lead with clarity, and become unstoppable. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another awesome episode of the Unstoppable Product Pioneer Podcast. Welcome back. I'm super excited for today's episode. I'm super excited, and I'm very honored to have our special guest with us today. I'm going to add into the stage. Welcome, Josh. Hello.
Hey, nice to be here.
It's really an honor. I have to say, I first saw your name in the book Aligned.
Yes,
Bruce.
it's a great book. I'm really proud to have had a very, very small contribution to it because I think the world of Melissa and Bruce, and what they have contributed to the profession.
Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah, no, so that's the first place I saw your name, and like it's one of my favorite books. And so like when I went on LinkedIn and then we connected and I was telling you about this podcast and like you agreed to come on the show, I was like, oh my goodness, whoa, this is so cool. So I'm really honored that you're here. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Of course. And Tamar, are you ever not super excited? That's one of the things that I love about listening to your past episodes is you bring so much excitement and joy to the practice.
Thank you. You know what? It's one of these things that like, this is just a topic I'm so passionate about.
Mhm.
And I'm very authentic. Like I'm so transparent. Like what you see is what you get. So like, I couldn't fake it if I wanted to try. So no, but I am so super excited. And I'm also I'm honored that you are here. Okay. So who is Josh, everyone? So I'll let Josh give a real introduction and tell us a little bit about him. But just that everyone should know, Josh is coming with over 25 years of experience in product management world, the tech world, startups, founders, so many exciting things that I think that our audience is really going to be able to resonate with. And I think that, just looking at the thumbnail of this episode, you could tell that Josh is an awesome, awesome person. Your picture, Josh, is just like, wow. It makes me really happy.
Shout out to my friend Fifi, who I think does the very best headshots in the Boston area.
It's awesome.
Also, very talented product designer.
It's awesome. It's just great. So I'm really excited to dive in, but I know that our audience is really going to enjoy this episode because there's so many exciting topics that we can explore and experience that you bring. So thank you so much. And why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, how you got here? I don't know. Take it away.
Absolutely. So in your intro, you described your guests as industry experts. In my head, that kind of coded as, oh, wait a minute, I'm just really old. So I was doing the math. It's not quite 25 years. I think it's 23 and a half years in tech today. I made a transition after college, after quickly burning out in the public and nonprofit sectors. I made the switch over to tech as lots of people did in the early 2000s. First starting off doing IC product management. We can talk about that. It was, I think, very different in the olden days in 2001, 2002, 2003. Ultimately, started my own tech startup with my best friend. Discovered I was a pretty mediocre entrepreneur, but I really loved the product leadership side of things. We had an extremely lucky exit to Google. I spent a couple of years there and realized I wasn't a big company kind of person, but leveraged my luck and my success into a series of first product manager / first product leader roles at a series of very early stage companies across a whole bunch of domains: B2B, B2C, mobile, fintech, RevTech, enterprise SaaS. I'm probably forgetting some. And then about 2.5 years ago, I realized that my family could afford for me to do this thing I had wanted to do for a while, and that was swap primary parenting duties with my wife. For the first 13-ish years of us being parents, she had been the primary parent, which allowed me to put, all my attention into, first being a founder, and then into a career in the tech world. I wanted her to have a chance to put as much or as little time and attention into her career as she wanted. Among other things, she is an extremely talented and best-selling writer, and I wanted her to be able to throw herself into that. Um, to keep myself out of trouble between the hours of, I don't know, 9 o'clock in the morning after school drop off and 3 o'clock in the afternoon at school pickup, when I'm not doing the shopping and the cooking and the laundry and the folding, though I'm really bad at the folding. I, uh, what else do I do? We had basketball games yesterday. Ultimate Frisbee season is coming up. Doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, orthodontist appointments, nagging kids to put their dishes away, nagging kids to do nagging kids to do their homework, though actually my kids don't need to be nagged. Very, very lucky there. I have this extremely small, extremely focused practice, um, supporting startups, founders, solo product managers, first-time heads of product, with advisory, coaching, and mentorship. And if you look at those roles, founder, head of product, and solo product manager, those are really the roles that I've held. I've tried to limit my practice to those areas where I think I have some actual experience. Um, Not all successful experience. I think, like most folks who have been doing this for a while, my career has been a pretty much continual series of failures, punctuated by that very rare, very helpful success. And being able to take advantage of and appreciate those successes is really where it's been. You learn a lot by failing. I've certainly learned a lot over my career, and if I can share some of that and help some folks in that really difficult position of founder or solo product manager, it brings me a fair amount of joy.
Wow. That is so awesome. That's amazing. Okay, first of all, totally side note, but very important for you to know. If you do not enjoy folding laundry as a mom of now almost 4.5-year-old and 19-month-old, um,
Yeah.
me and my husband laugh about this all the time. We constantly go back and forth. Is it worth it to fold the laundry, put it
Nope.
away, or do you just dump the fresh laundry in the basket, put it in the closet where it belongs, and then every day just pick out something else?
You're going to hear my parenting shame. When I was a kid, I put away all my laundry into my dresser and hung stuff up in the closets, and my floor was almost always clean, which is remarkable when I look back on this. This is a testimony to my own parents' parenting, because I have a whopping case of ADD. That's the reason why I, quote, retired from salaried work when I did this swap, is because, many people can hold down a salaried job and also not let their life fall apart. If I tried to do that, I would forget my kids at the bus stop. How do I know it's a thing I might have done in the past? So, as a parent, what I've discovered is there is a number of laundry baskets I can purchase where all of my kids' laundry is either in a dirty laundry basket or a clean laundry basket. And if they don't care about putting it away and the room is moderately neat, it will be fine. I have one daughter who loves clothes and like obsessively takes care of all of them. She learned how to read like the washing labels. There's a drying rack in the middle of my office because she knows what stuff needs to be air dried, which stuff needs to be hand washed. And she
Oh,
still can't manage to put things away inside of drawers. My other daughter just could really care less. Um,
oh my gosh.
Anyway, it's my failing as a parent. I will own it. Not really a failure. My kids are happy. They got
No,
nice
that is
friends.
such a
They do
winner.
well in school. They're polite. If the only challenge they have in life is their laundry is dirty and messy, then I can just support them and embrace it by leaving my own dirty and messy too. That's my excuse.
This is so awesome. We're gonna like have to do a whole nother like
We'll do a
episode
parenting.
on
Yeah,
this.
let's do a parenting
I'm having too
podcast.
much fun. Oh my gosh.
How
Can
much
we
have we
please?
learned about tech leadership and product management by being parents? So much.
Parents with ADHD.
Yeah,
Bring the
well,
funnel
who
down a
doesn't have
little more.
ADHD? I will tell you, I'm gonna pump my wife's book for a second. She's written a
Please.
number of books. She writes funny books about tough topics, mostly about parenting. Also, she's written a great one for kids, and she has another kids one coming out in a couple of years. Publishing takes a long time, but her best known book is called How to Stop Losing Your Shit with Your Kids. And for folks listening, if you struggle with management, if you struggle as a manager, one of the best books you can read is Buy My Wife's Book. And in your head, every time it says kids, replace it with coworkers, because I don't want to infantilize our I'm not doing this. I don't want to infantilize our coworkers at work. They are not kids, they are adults. But a book, How to Stop Losing Your Shit with Your Kids, is really a book about you and yourself. It's a book about mindfulness, without ever using the word mindfulness, because no one has time for that shit. It teaches you how to get better in touch with your own reactions to stressful situations, and gives you a series of concrete, and I'm going to be honest here, really, really funny tools. If you don't mind a couple of swear words, really funny tools for dealing with that. It was great for helping me improve as a manager and a leader inside of companies. And there's a lot of overlaps to be noticed, again, between being a parent and being a leader in a stressful tech
Yes.
startup.
Oh, yes. That's awesome. Okay, well, we got to get her
Carla
on the show,
Naumberg
too.
on Amazon, everywhere fine books are sold,
We'll put the
including, by
link
the
in the
way,
show
sells
notes.
really well in airport bookstores. If you are on a layover, go check it out. I don't know why, but they love it in airport bookstores.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. This is awesome. I'll tell you something so funny, Josh. One of my biggest challenges with being a podcast host is
Uh-huh.
I forget I'm in not in a one-on-one coaching session with my
That's
guests.
right.
I'm sitting here, I'm like, this is awesome. It's like, wait, okay, 1 second. We're in the middle of an episode. Okay.
You
Okay,
don't
everyone.
talk about parenting? You don't bring parenting into your coaching sessions? I think you're
Yeah.
missing out. I don't know, you gotta bring your whole self, right?
That's right. And you know what? I think at the end of the day, what I've learned for sure is that so much of parenting is so just self-work, and just holding up a mirror, to myself, looking at myself,
Yeah.
and just my 4-year-old has probably managed to point out almost all, if not all, of my flaws.
I mean, it's
So
sort of like your 4-year-old has been studying you intently their entire life,
Mhm.
and trying to get every little bit of leverage they possibly can to control their own chaotic world. Right? Imagine being a toddler. Everything is changing so fast, right? First you're tiny and couldn't do anything, and all of a sudden you're this giant thing, and you don't know where your limbs are, and you have these strong emotions. You have no words to talk about them really, and you just know you're hungry and you can't reach any food in the kitchen, and how do you express this thing and get people to act on you? And how do they do it? By studying you so carefully. And hey, out there, CEOs, if you've ever done this before, right? Again, your employees aren't children, they aren't 4-year-olds, but they are studying you just as carefully. And they are
Yeah.
also trying to figure out how do they communicate with you and interact with you in a way to, get clear the things they need you to know. And it's not on them to figure it out. These successful CEOs realize it's not on your employees to figure these things out. It is your job. You are the adult. You are a adult, at least in the room, and it's your job to figure these things out.
That's awesome. That's an awesome segue. Okay, so let's do that. I mean, there's so much there. And I mean, I'm going back to your story, and just how you made it into tech, then you know, buddied up with your best friend, started a company, ended up selling it to one of the biggest corporate companies,
Mhm. Yep.
then realized corporate's not your thing, and
Yeah.
now have 20 years of, founder startup leadership experience. Very
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
So can we
Well,
talk
I mean,
about
I think there aren't there never have been, and there aren't infinite numbers of ways to get into tech or product management. And product management, I mean, there's really only three. Um, right. Number one is some people join associate product manager programs, junior programs that typically feed out of top universities, and they hire right into them. Right. Google has one, Meta has one, Stripe has one. I don't know. Data Robot probably has one. I have no idea. Right. These are, competitive processes. They're not unlike getting into college or university. They aren't entirely unacademic. There are people who write books and blogs and podcasts and probably give coaching and training for how to ace your APM interview. I know nothing at all about that. Right. But if you are at a point in your life where one of those programs makes sense, that's one option for how to get in to product management. The second, probably the most common, is the horizontal transition. This is kind of Tamar, like what you've done. You're working at a job, either in a tech company or a tech-enabled company. You're doing something else. You could be doing sales. You could be doing marketing. You could be doing customer success. That's a really common path in. You could be doing design. I know a ton of designers You could be a data engineer. You could be a regular programmer engineer. You could be doing almost anything inside of there. You could get attracted to the work of product management for whatever reason. You could, read a book or watch them do their thing, or, listen to Lenny's podcast or listen to Tamara's podcast and get excited about product management. And then when an opening comes up, you apply in horizontally, and you have an advantage because they know who you are. They know that you're great. They know you're going to work hard. That's a second way. The third way is getting, and this is the way that I got my first product management job, is you get hired into a company that values some quality of yours, some positive quality of yours, more than they are going to ding you for the fact that you don't have any product management experience and have no idea what you're doing. And for my first job, this was back in the first .com era, and the company was growing really fast. It had taken like roughly 100-ish million in funding back when 100 million in funding was still considered a lot of money for a tech company. Again, this was 2001, and they just needed, as they would describe it, they just needed smart people. I don't know if I qualified as that, but same best friend had left. Sorry, this cat's gonna get in the way. Same best friend had left his Wall Street job to go work at this tech company, and he's like, "Hey, Josh, they're hiring." And being friends with Ben was probably pretty close to enough. I didn't flub the interview too badly. I wore a tie. Apparently, that was the wrong thing to do. I said clever things, and they hired me, and the rest was history. And a lot of people get in there as well, right? So what are things they could value about you? Maybe it's an alumni of the same college, right? I like hiring people, not me, I didn't go to NYU, but people are like, I like hiring people who went to NYU because I went to NYU and they're all really smart. It could be a friend or a friend of the family or even a family member. These are all great reasons to get hired. It could be because you have domain knowledge that they really value. Maybe you have a background in healthcare as a practitioner, right? A lot of nurses end up in health tech product management because nurses are really smart. They're really disciplined thinkers. And it's really nice to get to sit in front of a computer if the first 20 years of your life have been spent walking around and standing on a bedside. So it could be some kind of domain knowledge that you have. It could be some like professional skill. Like, again, people will often hire designers because it's a design focused company. You've designed similar products before, perhaps, and they're like, okay, we're going to naturally expect that your design skills are going to transfer over to product management. There's a lot of overlap and a lot of alignment there. And we are taking a design first approach. They might give you a chance because of that. That's really the third reason. And again, that's how I got into product management in the first time. Is my buddy Ben had taken this job. He had been there for a couple of months. They were hiring, and his thumbs up was enough.
Wow. Fascinating.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because now I'm trying to, as if I knew nothing about the product management role, listening to the 3 different pathways to get there, the role description is really interesting.
Yeah.
Role
and
description,
I suspect that what you
responsibilities.
actually do in that first job is going to differ a whole lot based on which pathway that you can kind of imagine it, right? Like if you're going into an APM program or some other kind of junior program, you can expect, hopefully, if it's a good program, a lot of fairly structured support, right? Their expectation is, if you're coming out of college, which isn't uncommon, you don't even know how to work yet, right? It's like going to management consulting. The first thing they do is teach you how to, log into a computer and tie your shoes. How long should you take for lunch? Really basic things that we all kind of have a sense for implicitly. If you're coming in as a horizontal transfer, there's an expectation. They know that you're good at working, and they know you understand the customer, understand the company at least, and they're teaching you product management as a series probably of discrete skills. If you're coming into the kind of company that would hire somebody with zero experience based around some non-experiential quality of yours, by the way, one important non-experiential quality is willingness to work for not so much money. I'm going to say it out loud because it's true, right? If you're taking a job at a startup without any product management experience and you're an early hire of theirs, you're probably willing to work for not a lot of cash and maybe even not a whole lot of equity, certainly as compared to your friends who are going into an APM track at a place like Google or Facebook. If you're going into one of those companies, you're learning by fire. You have no idea what it's gonna be like. They have no idea what your job is supposed to be either. So it's really interesting. You're learning how to be a product manager while reporting to somebody who doesn't know what product management is really supposed to be about.
Hmm.
And sometimes it works out well and sometimes it works out poorly, but it's almost always a fairly painful and uncomfortable experience. And that's one of the reasons why I started my practice. Was not that, spending an hour a week talking to somebody like me is going to magically turn you into a highly skilled product manager. But if it can make your experience a little bit less uncomfortable, a little bit less painful, that seems worthwhile too. And if you can avoid making some really mistakes that in retrospect will seem really obvious, that's a good win for your employer.
Right. Wow. So fascinating. Okay, so taking all of this and your experience, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this on this scenario. Okay,
Okay.
so I'm a UX designer, right? Or I practiced, UX design for 5 years. Now I'm, kind of moved away from the tactical work. But as a UX designer sitting within the product team, one of the first questions I always asked when we got a new project is, how are we prioritizing the different tasks within this feature that we're working on, and how do
Mhm.
these feature prioritizations link to the business objective goals for the coming quarter? Because I always wanted
Yeah.
to understand, like, I wanted to make sure that I was not only providing value to my team, but that whatever it was that we were doing in our little, siloed department was ultimately going to drive success for the greater, macro company.
Yeah.
Um, and I almost never got answers to those
No.
questions. Um, Shocking. Never got answers. And so it was very, very frustrating. Um, and I'm curious, like, because the role and responsibilities and the role description vary so much, right? When it comes to
Yeah.
like product management in general. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on a situation where, I guess, the most common situations, unfortunately, today, where we've got so many departments working in silos. And I think internally, like, teams are trying very hard to increase collaboration, but when it comes to cross-functional, collaboration, that's, I think, still a huge struggle. Um,
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear, like, from your experience and from your perspective, what is the best way to utilize within a tech company, whether it's startup, small size, or even to mid-size? Corporate's a whole different story, but or yeah, past, I don't know, 200 employees, but small enough that, the role of the product management team or the role of the product
Mhm.
managers, director of product, um, like, how is the best way for us to utilize the role, this department that seems to be like strategically placed at the core of the company oftentimes?
Yeah.
Like, how can we utilize, and if you were to write the ultimate like job description for the role of a product manager, like, I'm curious to hear. I feel like I'm all over the place, but like, I'm curious to hear like what that might look like. Like,
Yeah. Well, look, I'm not surprised. I like your question, and I'm not surprised you don't get a satisfactory answer. I like your question because you're asking about a thing at the core of what a product manager should be doing, which is articulating what the strategy is, right? The mission, perhaps, the vision, the strategy, and the roadmap for whatever their area of like, authority is. Is it a project? Is it a team? Is it a feature? Is it for, the entire tech half of the company? If they're, a product leader, head of product, you're asking them to articulate that. And people are really bad at strategy. Like nobody really knows how to write a good strategy. And the people who are good at writing good strategies aren't necessarily good at writing useful strategies. Like strategy is really tough. I think that's one half of it. So you're asking a concrete question, and the reason they aren't really good at answering it is because they don't have a really strong answer, right? Mostly people are being reactive. At startups, at really early stage startups, it isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I think this gets into the question of prioritization, right? You're asking it from an angle of prioritization, which is important. Um, People don't always like the real reasons they are prioritizing things, which is often because somebody more senior or more convincing says to do it.
mhm.
And that's not bad. In fact, actually, this is a fun anecdote. If you listen to Lenny Rachitsky's podcast interview, where he interviews the person, and I'm blanking on their name, we can look it up afterwards or take a second to Google this, the person who invented the RICE framework. You're familiar with the RICE prioritization
Oh
framework?
yeah,
Fairly common one,
yeah, of course.
right?
Oh my
And
gosh,
he
yeah, 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 yeah.
describes the genesis of the RICE framework. It wasn't so because they had a list of 18 different initiatives and were trying to figure out which one to start on first. It was because they had decided what to do, and now they needed a way to communicate that beyond their team in a way that sounded sufficiently quantitative and sufficiently disciplined and sufficiently like data driven that people would accept their prioritization. They knew what they were going to do. Why do they know it? Because they had a clear strategy. They knew what their business was. They had a deep intuitive understanding of the market needs and prospect needs and customer needs. They knew who their ICP was. They knew which chunk of the market they were focusing on, which chunk of the market they weren't going to focus on. They had a unique value proposition, a unique selling proposition, a hypothesis about what the market needed and how it was being underserved that was resonating. All these things they had that was part of the strategy. And when you have all those things, like what to prioritize is actually pretty straightforward. But people don't like saying that. Like, we don't really give people permission to say, yeah, we have a leadership team that understands what it's doing really, really well. Or worse yet, they don't like saying out loud, we have a founder who has a hypothesis about the market and what it needs. And basically, we're just delivering against that hypothesis. And we have no more idea if it's going to be right or wrong than the investors do. But if it's right, we'll make a lot of money. And if it's wrong, we'll take a salary for a couple of years. We'll sell the company, at a distressed price, and we'll move on to the next thing. But that's fundamentally what startups are all about, is
Yeah.
you have either a well-articulated or poorly articulated company strategy. You're just delivering against that thing. At larger companies, it becomes much more complicated, right? Because a lot of times at larger companies, what you're doing isn't really directly tied to a company strategy, unless you want to say something about your own role in the company and articulate out loud how diminished it is. At tech companies, the tech half of the company is the part of the company that's delivering value. So it's really important that where you are investing your scarce resources are valuable things. That's why oftentimes at startups, it's the CEO making those kinds of allocation decisions. The CEO is the one driving the roadmap. The CEO is the one prioritizing the problems you're going to be focusing on and the solutions you might build. At big companies, it's not the tech part of the company that's delivering the value. They're really value enablers, right? Somebody is waiting for you, right? You're at a bank and you're building a feature because you want to go sell a product to a certain segment of the market, big businesses, small businesses, manufacturers, consulting companies, who knows, right? It's because you are implementing a requirement that's needed for a new regulation coming out, and it's got to be done by a certain date. Whatever it is, there's somebody else in the company who's actually making the company money or preventing some terrible outcome, like being sued by the federal government, and they're just waiting for you to finish. So all of a sudden, it's not really your prioritization. It's not really your roadmap. And for whatever reason, we have a hard time saying this out loud as an industry, right? We want to think of ourselves as product managers or product leaders as being captains of the company. And a lot of times we aren't, and that is okay. But again, understand, what role you're playing. That was a really long answer to a simple question.
No, that was fantastic. That was really fantastic. That's great. It's a crazy thing because I mean, of course, depending on the size of the company, like things are going to look different. But when you're
Yeah.
talking to a CEO in a language that they understand, right? Like if I come to the CEO in a smaller company as a designer and I say, look, for the past, you know, 3 weeks, the projects that I have been working on have nothing to do with your business objective goals that you reviewed at, the
Mhm.
past, monthly company meeting. It's like
Yeah.
if you want to see user satisfaction scores or customer retention, rates go up by this percent by
Yeah.
Q2, then I need you to approve this project for us to
Yeah.
work on because that's what's going to deliver ROI. If I'm working on all this other stuff, like I'm happy to do that. It's just
Yeah.
totally disconnected to the business strategy, you know.
Yeah. This question
So
of alignment is really tough. I'll tell you the thing I say to CEOs, and frankly, the thing I say to heads of product, and even that first product management hire inside of a startup. Um, this isn't a tool for like getting the whole company aligned, but it's a tool I found. It's a thinking tool that I found helpful for getting your own head screwed on straight. Um, and that is, I asked them to imagine themselves going to present at the quarterly board meeting and saying something like, "I have some good news and I have some bad news." I'm going to try to do this as a design leader, which I'm not, but I'll try. Um, and the board director's like, "Okay." give us the bad news first. You say, well, our revenue is not where it should be, right? Sales are down. In fact, time to close is getting longer. And not only are new sales down, but we're seeing the first hints of what's going to turn into a real churn problem. Not everybody who thought was going to renew is going to renew. Our CSAT scores are lower than we expected them to be. Our NPS scores are trending in the wrong direction. And on top of that, we're starting to hear rumblings that our competitors are outselling us as well. They're building features which we just can't seem to get shipped that are really resonating well in the market. And the board of directors goes, "Oh my God, that's terrible. But you said you had some good news too." And you're like, "Yeah, our LinkedIn campaigns are performing really well, and we think it's due to our rebranding." And the board of directors says, "What are you talking about?" Right? Because this doesn't matter, right? The business isn't in place, right? So that you get a lot of likes or thumbs up. Is this a real design thing? I don't know. Tell me if I'm off base. Your business isn't in place to get lots of likes or thumbs up or direct messages from your colleagues saying how good your new design system looks and how good your marketing content is on LinkedIn, right? The company exists so that you can, I don't know, close deals, get more customers, get more good customers, have them increase what their spend is going to be, not churn, be really happy, tell their friends. Like, these are the core things that businesses are all about. And if you find yourself, as you've apparently found yourself, in the situation of doing a whole lot of work that, maybe is successful, right, in the scope of the project you were given, but isn't going to be advancing those key things forward, is this really where you need to be spending, or you can afford to spend your time as an attention as a company leader? And if the answer is no, maybe you should rethink how you're focusing yourself. So I like your question. It aligns very closely with the way that I want leaders in the company. And I think of every product manager as being a company leader. The way that I think every leader in the company should be thinking about the work that they do.
Right.
The head of sales who says, good news and bad news. Bad news, close rates are down, timelines are creeping up. We don't really have good funnel coverage. They said, we have some good news. It's like, oh yeah, we just spent 3 months moving from HubSpot to Salesforce. Nobody cares. The board of directors doesn't care. There's no value created over there. Nobody's going to buy your business or value it better, or let you go public or whatever you want to do because you're using Salesforce instead of HubSpot. That doesn't matter, right? You have a set of strategic outcomes, right, driven by an understanding of how your business creates value. That's what your board of directors cares about, and that's what you should care about too.
Right. That's so awesome. And I feel like I would just add to that a tiny bit, which is that when the CEO does say to you, "Are you kidding?" The good news is that you've invested some time in redesigning our design system. How in the world is that affecting the bottom line of our business? It's like, come
Right.
prepared with the explanation as to why improving on the design system is directly linked to affecting the bottom line of the business.
We switched
Like,
from Figma to Canva and saved $800 a year.
right.
Really? That's where you're spending your time?
It's a very right. It's a hard. I feel like sometimes, and again, like if there's a UX team, that's like the UX team, that's a whole different conversation. But like UX work and like marketing, LinkedIn campaigns, like that's usually like more like the marketing team. But like
Uh-huh.
the UX teams who are the ones who are really like working in the application, in the software, doing work that's directly connected to our customers and to our users. I find so often that it's really
Yeah.
it's hard to explain. Oftentimes, I think designers have a hard time putting a dollar amount or a value, tag to the work that they're doing to explain to leadership why what they're doing is directly connected to, driving successful, ROI, whatever it might be. But I think it's really important for
Uh-huh.
both the team and for leadership to understand, that there has to be like also an explanation, because otherwise what comes in as the good news might be perceived as also bad news, right?
I think there are 3 places where designers get into trouble, where well-intentioned product designers get themselves into trouble. Number one is if they don't have, and these, by the way, aren't necessarily their responsibility. I think it's oftentimes somebody else's responsibility to address this, but when I see situations that aren't working, it's generally one of three things. Number one is the designers don't really understand the business the company is in. So, for example, uh, customer satisfaction or NPS or even on-screen conversion rates, right, for like, through a funnel, um, aren't always good proxies for what business the company is in. And the best designers I found are the ones who understand that just as deeply as the product manager or somebody on the executive team, if not better, so they can make sure that the things they are optimizing for are the things that are actually important to the company. It's
Hmm.
really easy to optimize for the wrong things, and therefore you're not going to make a bad product that way, but you're just not going to be focusing on the areas that are most important. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two is designers often get into trouble if the company isn't able to articulate clear preferences for a segment of the market. And as a result, find themselves talking to, I'm using quotes here, bad users, right? Or bad customers, right? A bad user or a bad customer is one whose own needs don't align with the vision of the company, and you're never going to be able to satisfy.
Hmm.
So, for example, I worked with a client who did scientific software, software for scientists, and really, what they were building for was like, I'm going to make up the story a little bit, but they were building for biologists at research universities. Like that's where the vision of the company was. Um, they had a team that kept on working really hard, doing all the right things to like build an enhancement onto the product. Just wasn't getting any traction. People didn't use it. People didn't like it. And it was a surprise because they were doing great discovery. It turns out they were talking to the wrong kind of scientists. They were talking to scientists doing drug discovery at pharmaceutical companies
Hmm.
because nobody told them that was the wrong one, or more likely, because when they said they needed to talk to some customers, do some discovery and do some testing and all of that, the go to market side of the company pushed them in the wrong direction. Maybe they just happened to talk to a sales leader who was themselves thinking about maybe making a move into pharma, right? Maybe they were talking to the customer success person who was responsible for a bunch of really unhappy pharma scientists, right? Chemists working in pharma who are unhappy. Why? Because the product wasn't built for them. It's like, oh, well, maybe I'll put, I'll make them happy by connecting them with the design team because customers love talking to the design team. Designers are cool. They're fun. They have good fashion sense. They speak clearly. You get nice, gifts afterwards for participating. Designers are great. So number two reason where they get themselves in trouble is they're talking to the wrong customer segment. And that often happens. The company does a bad job of articulating who is our actual customer segment. And number three is when they're kept too far away from engineering and they generate designs that are too difficult or too expensive for engineering to actually implement.
Hmm.
And most designers I know desperately want to like be talking to engineering from like, moment one, moment zero, moment -1, right?
Hmm.
They don't want to build things which are complicated. They know that if they, walk through designs with engineering, before they show them to even a potential user for evaluation, right? Your first wireframes, they'll get great feedback from engineering. But too many organizations put design in a separate bucket or separate box. Maybe they use an agency style model instead of an embedded model. Maybe they have engineers who are too stressed or told to just focus on coding. Lots of possible reasons. But anyway, those are the three times I see designers like you who have a business focus and a product focus get themselves into trouble.
Fascinating. It's so interesting. It's interesting because, like, for me, it came naturally to want to understand the business from the start. But
Yep.
I realized very quickly that that just happens to be because, like, my dad owned a business, my grandparents owned businesses, so
Yeah.
my brain is more wired in like a
It's in your
business
blood.
strategic, yeah. But yeah, no, that's wow. That is
Well,
really
but
wow.
it's also like it's partly the designer, right? But it's also the context. And the best designer in the world in a company that's a bad match, in an org with a manager who's a bad match, all of these things at the wrong moment of time. What I like to remind people is not every great, let's say it's for product managers, not every great product manager is a great fit for every great company at every moment in time.
Right.
So it may be an opportunity for the designer to skill up a little bit, to get training, get some coaching, right? Learn a different perspective, practice considering this from, but it could just be a bad fit, right? Company wise. right? If they're being stuck in a agency type role, there's only so much they're going to be able to do to engage with engineering.
Right.
If the go-to-market team hasn't gotten their act together to identify an ICP, right? If they haven't really figured out who's going, right? What is our unique selling proposition? What is our unique hypothesis about the market? And who are the people who care? And if that work hasn't been done either by typically it's done by product management, either by product management or by the go-to-market team, expecting like magically a designer is going to intuit these sorts of things, right, is unfair. And even if they do intuit those sorts of things, they'll be getting no support from the organization. So context is really, really important as well. And in some ways, the less experience you have, so the more experience you have, the quicker you'll know, hopefully, whether or not the context is right. Maybe, you're an organization that empowers you to change things organization wide. But oftentimes, if you lack that experience, if you lack the opportunity to empower yourself, it's going to be really hard for you to be successful in those situations by your definition, Tamar. Lots of companies will be very happy with your work, right? Lots of CEOs will be very happy with you churning out, great designs and great marketing materials and great mocks and all those sorts of things, even if those aren't aligned with what they say out loud the company strategy is. So you can still be successful in difficult environments. And in fact, most people who have been successful in their lives, myself included, were successful in non-ideal environments.
Right. Fascinating. Okay, so I mean, I don't know, we could go all day, but if on that note, like if you had to leave, like with one piece of advice, I think, I mean, there's so much that we discussed, but I feel like this idea of empowering yourself that you just mentioned, right? What would be a piece of advice that you would give to our listeners who are thinking, I mean, I'm sure everyone's gears are turning like
Yeah.
mine are, but just I don't know, like what would you say, whether it's a resource, something practical, like a resource, a framework, we discussed this idea of a board meeting. I think that's a really powerful like storytelling
Mhm.
scenario for people to have in their minds. Is there like one or two things that you feel are just really important to highlight? Um,
Yeah, I think that the only real way to the question of empowering yourself is interesting. The only way to really empower yourself over the long term is to know yourself. Because empowerment for me, right, in my moment in time, almost 50 years old, sitting here in my semi-retired state, at least until my kids are off to college, is really different from yours, Tamar. And you need to like know what you want and who you are. I think we talked about this a little bit in the context, right, of being a parent, right? It's not about the kids, it's about you. Like, what do I need? What are roles that I'm going to find fulfilling? And it's okay if you don't always have those things, because part of the work of your career is to figure these things out about yourself. Um, like I said, my own professional career has been a continual series of failures, punctuated by the very rare success. That's an okay thing. And it's okay to remind yourself that just because something is hard doesn't mean you're bad at it. So number one, know yourself. There is a ton of content out there. There are a ton of people saying, here's how to be successful and here's what success means. You should listen to all of that. You really should. But you should interrogate it through your own lens of your own understanding of who you are and where you are, of your own context, right? Not so I'm a big fan of Lenny's podcast. I've been part of his community for almost 5 years now. Since the very, very beginning, I made some close friends there. He has amazing speakers on his podcast. He has amazing guest writers in his blog. Just because somebody who has been successful says, here is how they did things, doesn't mean it's the way that you are going to be successful by doing things. You can listen to it. You can think about it. You can think about their context, the guest's context, the expert, the experienced person's context. When they had this, you can think about what lessons going to take away from this and bring it into your own model for what you yourself need. And don't let your understanding of somebody else's story on a 1 hour podcast influence your beliefs about what you need to do to be successful. If you try to create somebody else's success, you're just going to make yourself miserable. And by the way, that goes for what I'm saying too. Go, all of you listeners out there, go interrogate what Josh is saying at this moment, and does it match, your needs and your picture of the world and where you want to be going.
this is incredible. So incredible. This is really like all the work that I do, like really just whether it's like coaching or workshops, working with people to really understand if what they're doing aligns with who they are, if you know, the courses and the programs that they've purchased from self-appointed gurus, and are they copy and pasting everyone else's success into their lives and showing them why it's not working
Really,
because
which is okay. I'm going to take a big step back and say that's okay. If you go to art school, your first couple of years aren't spent exploring your own personal vision. Maybe live on your side, but you're spending a lot of time trying to copy other people's styles. How did Picasso sketch, right? How did 6 lines, embody the feel and energy of a horse? You're going to copy some Cubist stuff. You do a lot of copying of realistic art, and that's the okay place to start. But you're not going there because you want to be the next Rembrandt or the next Picasso, right? You're copying the work because you're developing your skills, and those series of skills will help you later on when you have the maturity to begin developing your own vision, which is going to come at
100%.
different points for different peoples, depending a lot on the context, a little bit on what's inside, and a lot about what the context is around them. So there's
You
nothing
just have to
wrong.
remember to do that.
Yeah.
Like that's
Look, I
that's the
was
part
on, I
that
had a
people get
podcast come
stuck
out
on.
today. It was with Brenton Salati, who's the brand new VP of product at Pi Insurance, and he successfully implemented the product operating model, the Marty Kagan style product operating model in Pi Insurance, which is, a very, very tech-enabled, but still tech-enabled company. And it's a really impressive story. There are some things in there that he did that I want to go ahead and copy. There are some parts of that aren't really relevant to my own particular experience. And there are some things which I'm just not sure about, which I might go give a shot to. And I might go I might go try. Just because one of the things I love about him is he's not saying go and do things exactly that I did it. He's like, here's a story of how I did things. And I hope that my story is able to broaden your experience just a little bit. And I really appreciate that perspective.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's unique. I don't hear that from a lot of people. Like the reminder to now take it and make it your own.
Well, it's also the danger, right, of being on a podcast and being called an expert. It's like, oh, now I got to deliver expertise.
No, this is
My
this is
friends, there is no
incredible.
expertise. There's only moving forward and gray hair.
This is unbelievable. This is amazing. Okay, Josh, for everyone who wants to get in touch with you, and thank you for this incredible episode and learn more about you and your work. What's the best place for them to find you and connect?
Yeah, my hippie parents blessed me with incredible SEO with my hyphenated name. So go type in Josh Herzig-Marx into Google, or any variation of my name into any particular search engine, and you will probably find some way to get in touch with me. I'm on LinkedIn. The easiest website to find me is jhm.lol. You get to see that great little picture. Or jhm.omg.lol. Thank you, Tamar, for sharing that below. You can put that in. You can search for me. You can email me. You can message me on LinkedIn. I'm on a bajillion private and open product Slack communities. So if you are on Lenny Slack or Rand's Leadership Slack, I'm on there. Product School, Mind the Product, all of them. Go search for my name. Hit me up. I'm always happy to chat.
Fantastic. Unbelievable. Okay, everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm sure that you're like leaving on a high, just like I am, with your gears turning fast and just really going over the incredible stuff that we learned. Josh, thank you so much for taking the time
Thank you so
to
much. It
be
was a
with us.
pleasure
This
chatting.
was so awesome. And I really, really appreciate all your insights and knowledge that you shared with us. So thank you.
Absolutely. Take
Thanks,
care, everybody.
everyone. Bye. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a review. And of course, please be sure to check out our awesome community where you can connect with podcast guests, like-minded professionals, and be surrounded by others excited by your success. Keep pushing for impact and unlocking unstoppable growth. See you in the community.